Good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Today is, without the phone, I don't know, January 10th, 5:30 p.m. We are calling today's special meeting into order. Madam Clerk, will you please call the roll?
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Danziger.
Present.
Vice Mayor Rose.
Present.
Commissioner Lansman.
Present.
Commissioner Mashahid.
Present.
Commissioner Velasquez.
Here.
Mayor, you have a quorum.
All right, thank you. Moving on to item 1C. Chief, will you please lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance?
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you everybody for being here. Moving on to item 2A, approval and compensation adjustment for the acting town manager. This is my item. I will just introduce it, which is essentially to approve an adjustment for the acting town manager's salary upon effective upon his appointment on December 13, 2022, to compensate for the additional duties and responsibilities. If we can get a motion to adjust the salary as discussed here tonight, so we can start with this item.
I'd like to
Motion.
make a motion to discuss the salary.
Second.
Third.
All right, for the record.
All in favor, say aye.
Oh, we don't,
Aye.
Any opposed? Mayor, the motion carried.
thank you. Usually we'll call it after once the price
It's
is
for
in there, we'll
discussion
modify it
purposes.
for discussion. Well, hopefully it's an action tonight. The idea, of course, is that we have a new acting town manager whose salary is well below where the town manager's salary was, and to compensate for the adjusted duties and responsibilities to ensure that he is compensated and doesn't get upset and leave us high and dry. Are there any comments by the commission? Any suggested?
I don't want to make a motion necessarily yet, but I'd like to have the discussion around matching the prior manager's salary for the interim until we, of course, select and hire a new town manager. For the public's knowledge, as public record, the prior manager's base compensation was $185K. So I would, let me make the motion. I'll move to increase the acting town manager's salary to $185K while he's acting in our interim.
Second.
Are we calling
So-
a vote on it?
I saw the other things to discuss or
Yeah, we can discuss.
I would just like to comment that he's currently doing the work of 3 people, town manager, assistant town manager, and director of public works, and I think he's doing a great job, and that's why I agree that he should come in at 185.
Commissioner?
Okay, I'm okay with this raise. However, I think right now we should freeze the assistant town manager position until there is a new town manager hired. Under those circumstances, I would be okay with this raise. I actually don't think that we need an assistant town manager. If we have an efficient town manager, there should be no additional waste of money on another person when we have directors to every single department. So if the commission agrees on that, I mean, I'd be okay with that.
Just point of clarification, I don't think we're discussing an assistant level position right now. The only thing that we're discussing is for our acting town manager, an adjustment to his compensation for this period to compensate him for, yes, doing 3 jobs, 4 jobs, however many jobs he's doing. But yeah, we should have a discussion further about our org structure. But again, as the commission, we only have authority to hire a town manager and or a town attorney. The other layers are actually the town manager's responsibility.
All right, thank you. Just to add to that, like you were saying, the item here today is approval of the compensation for the acting town manager. Additionally, as I'm sure we'll hear later tonight, the charter forbids us from hiring, firing, or being, or even, being involved in such a process. So if the acting town manager ever decided that he needed the help, then that would be up to him as per our charter. But again, the discussion tonight is about compensation.
I understand that. However, the town commission does have the authority to eliminate a position when it's not needed, as is the assistant town manager's position. I mean, so this is something that we definitely can discuss and that we can vote on to freeze this type of position so there is no one else being hired here while we are hiring a new town manager. So,
All right,
I mean,
again,
that's
I
what,
think we're going off topic, so I'm going to bring the conversation back to the matter at hand. Mr. Manager, you had a comment?
Mr. Mayor, thank you. And by the way, bosses, elected officials, thank you very much for the opportunity. That's up and foremost. Thank you for the opportunity. Obviously, the faith in the position in me is something that means a lot to me, so thank you very much. Just to reassure, I don't intend, as an acting town manager, just for sakes of ease, to fill an assistant town manager position. I think that's something that should be left for the permanent individual, and at that time, perhaps that discussion is held. With that said, the town staff, we have a great team, and this is the team we need to keep moving forward. You may see some reinforcement within the public works side, but again, that's just to make sure the public works is still providing the level of service we deserve, the residents deserve. So just wanted to put that in again. Just thank you.
So, first comment is I would like the pay to be backdated from the time that he took the position, which was the day after the meeting. And I'm comfortable moving the pay to wherever we have our discussion later on in the evening to match that. Because when we're looking for our new town manager discussion, we're gonna be having a salary discussion. And if that number is 200, 220, 230, whatever we decide on to look for a new town manager, I am comfortable going with that number for our interim town manager, because he's gonna be not only the town manager, he's the assistant town manager, and the public works director in the interim. So I personally would like to see whatever number we discuss later on tonight be the number that it's prorated for, and obviously from the time he took over from the previous meeting.
I think that's fair.
In response, as the motion maker, again, you're merging a couple of items together. We have to go through a process to search, interview, and then hire a town manager. What we pay he or she will be determined, obviously, at that point. Right now, the topic is, how do we address the compensation for the acting town manager effective the day he took the position 1 month ago at the meeting, whatever date that was. I'm okay with backdating that if our systems allow that. Mr. Resio, I know we had a discussion about previous backdating of comp.
It can be retroactive
It can
in this
be?
situation, yes.
Okay, so let me change my motion to increase current compensation to $185K, backdating to the day he took the position as acting town manager. But I'd like to keep it at $185 and then have the discussion about what we pay the new town manager, whoever we select.
I personally, again, Mr. Gomez
I
is
second it.
fulfilling 3 roles. Who seconded it? I think
I
let's
did.
do it. Okay. You know, Mr. Gomez is fulfilling 3 roles right now, as discussed. If we are going to be prepared later on tonight to start the compensation at a higher rate, I don't know why we would lock him into a lower rate here. I'm kind of with the vice mayor on this, where we see where the discussion goes later tonight and then solidify an amount. Yep.
Well, first, I feel that if we're gonna, once we go out there looking for a new town manager, I don't think we should put limits to, ranges within this amount of money. More let people come and tell us what they're looking for in a salary. So right now, I agree with Commissioner Landsman and Commissioner Maischeid regarding keeping our current acting town manager at the rate that the previous town manager was. I don't think we need to be raising to $230,000 when that's not what the previous person was making. I think you need to let people come and tell you what they're expecting versus surveys and things like this. We don't know what people are willing to take, and there's fabulous people out there probably in the north where it's nice, where it's cold and everything, and they want to come to Florida and they find this beautiful, amazing oasis that we have here, and they decide this is an amazing job to take, and I'll take it for $165 or $185. They might not come back here and say, I want $230,000, or I'm not going to take this because the town next door pays $340. You know, I don't think you can base it on that. I think let's go with the motion the way Commissioner Lansman has said, and let's leave it at that. And when the time comes to hire the new manager, that's when you give a raise to the person that's going to get it, and that's it. Or lower the money, because if a person comes in that's extra qualified and they only want $165, well, why wouldn't I give them that?
Just one more comment, if I may.
Well, if I may, I mean, you, Commissioner, you're in HR. Do you typically list positions and leave the salary open to be determined by the applicant, or does the company put out a range that they're willing to pay? Commissioner, please, you had your piece to talk. Let's let everybody else have a chance. Thank you.
So this is an area of expertise. I've been in recruiting for 40 years. Good night. And that's part of HR, which is very close to compensation, and so I have a lot of experience in this area. I understand the potential for another compensation package being offered whoever we hire for the town manager in the future. I get that, and it doesn't need to be the $185 that we were paying the former manager and or increase our acting town manager. That can be, again, a separate topic of discussion. We're dealing with one issue right now, which is making sure we compensate our acting town manager appropriately for the work he's doing in the interim until we hire someone for this position. I certainly would encourage anyone who's interested, including our acting town manager, to apply for the position if they're interested in this as a full-time role. To your question, typically practices you do not include a range of salary, although things are changing, frankly, where some states are now legislating that you have to put a range of salary in a job posting for a position. Florida is not one of those states, frankly, nor do I think it ever will be one of those states, because we tend to be very right-to-work oriented. California, Colorado, you do have to put a range of salary in a posting for a position, which can help or not. I think we should, in the later discussion at the 7 o'clock meeting, we're going to discuss the steps, the procedure, the process to hire, to solicit, to search, and then interview and hire a new town manager. We can then discuss, should we include the range? And it's going to be a range. It's not a singular number. It's a range. The range can be from 185 to X. That's again, a separate topic. I feel compelled that we want to make sure we take care of our current acting town manager, pay him appropriately, which I think is appropriate what we were paying the former town manager, and the next person we hire, whoever he or she is, we can discuss, negotiate that compensation with that individual, which is typical in the hiring process.
Commissioner, again, I usually go through the rules of decorum, but these meetings tend to be usually less excited. You have to be recognized before you speak. All right, there's one chair. Thank you. So you have your motion on the table. I think everybody's been clear where they want to go. You want to add to that? The opposition? Madam Clerk, you want to call the roll, please?
Commissioner Mashine?
Yes.
Commissioner Velasquez?
Yes.
Commissioner Lansman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Danziger?
Yes.
Mayor, the motion carries.
Thank you.
As the prevailing party, I'd like to make a motion that we
You need to have the floor,
have the
Mr. Vice
floor.
Mayor. Yes, go ahead.
As the prevailing party, I'd like to,
No.
I'd like to make a motion that the prorated salary for the town manager be prorated with where we have our discussion at the meeting, so that this can be opened and discussed at the next meeting. So I'm comfortable with the 185, but if we're gonna move our next range to 200, 220, 230, I'd like it to be prorated there at that meeting. So that's my motion.
I'll second it.
Can you repeat that motion?
That whatever salary range we discuss at the second meeting later on tonight, that our acting town manager salary be adjusted to that number, as that's where we're gonna be looking for it. And if he's filling the role right now of 3 people, I think whatever, at least in the meantime, that range is where it should be. So that was my
To be
motion.
clear,
Just
if the range.
to what number if it's a
The low
range?
point is higher than where we are,
The median of the range.
the medium of the range?
Middle of the range.
I've seconded it, we'll see.
But how, aren't you supposed to pass the
Commissioner,
Aren't you supposed to pass the gavel?
Commissioner, you're not recognized.
Okay,
Yeah.
can you recognize me so I can ask you the
If you raise your
question?
hand as it is written in our rules
Right
of
here.
decorum, then I will notice you and I
Okay,
will
so I'm
recognize you.
trying to get
Yes.
your attention.
I see you, thank you. Go.
Okay. So you're seconding, but you haven't passed the gavel to anybody.
So is your comment
You
explaining
don't
to
have
me
to
how to
pass
run
the
the
gavel
meeting?
for a second.
No, I'm just
Thank
asking. Aren't you supposed to pass the gavel before you second?
All right, next.
Okay, okay.
Any other comments?
I understand the motivation, I understand the effort. I think we are getting way too ahead of ourselves. We had a change a month ago, we have an acting town manager. This effort is to appropriately pay him for the period of time he's acting as the acting town manager. I don't feel comfortable suggesting that there's gonna be a range, we take a median. The range you put on a job posting for a new position is there to potentially attract the right crowd of candidates. If somebody says, I need to make 200,000, but the range only goes to 100, they're likely not going to express interest or apply for the position, and that's a good thing. We want to have a range that is perhaps, again, X to X, but to predict what will pay that person now is impossible. We don't know who it's going to be. We don't know where they're coming from. We don't know their expectations. We're way too far ahead of ourselves. I think the effort to get to 185, which we've passed, is the right step for today.
Well, I mean, just to ask you something, Commissioner, 185 would have been the bare minimum, right? Because that is what the previous position was paying. Here we have somebody who's doing 3 jobs, already running town, who's running public works, doing the job of the previous administration and the job of the previous assistant town manager. I would think, and that's why I kind of agreed with the vice mayor, that shouldn't require the bare minimum, which would be what the previous manager was making, but at least, look at the medium of where we're looking to pay, since he is performing the duty right now of 3 people.
May I speak?
Yes, Commissioner.
Well, maybe if the previous town manager wouldn't have left the day that you were going to give him a review, then you at that point would have had a higher salary that you could have used to justify an increase of a salary for the acting town manager. So maybe that's how the process should have been taken, instead of going in there and asking the town manager to leave. So I think right now the best thing to do is to continue to give him the same salary that he had prior, that the prior town manager had. And then once you go out there and look for town managers, then you can make it like what Commissioner Lansmith just said. I mean, you can't just give a range of something you don't know. You have to wait till the process is done and we know exactly what, and honestly, I wouldn't even put a range. Because this way, if you have a range and there's a guy that he makes 250,000 and your range is 230, but he's willing to take those 230, it's not gonna apply. So why put yourself in that position when you can have maybe different people that are gonna come here for different reasons, because they wanna come to our paradise, because they wanna move to Florida, and they wanna have that good job. But I think the discussion right now is to stay at the town manager, give him an increase, which is far more than what he currently makes. I mean, what is that, an increase of, I don't even know how much that increase is. I think that's sufficient for 3 jobs that you've put him to do.
I find it, that you're going to say that without knowing the previous salary is kind of interesting. But I think we have a motion on the table. I think everybody's position is clear. You want to call the vote?
Commissioner Velasquez?
No.
Commissioner Maisha, do you have any comments on it before we finish the vote?
No, I still agree with Commissioner Lansman.
Commissioner Lansman?
1 second, Madam Clerk, do you want to rescind the motion, since it seems like there's a 3 on there already?
No, I'll let him call the vote.
All right.
Commissioner Lansman?
No.
Commissioner Mushide?
No.
Vice Mayor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Danziger?
Yes.
Mayor, the motion fails.
All right. All right, moving on to item 2B. Regulation prohibitions on public property. To introduce the item, the Town Commission should consider directing legislation to regulate and/or prohibit certain activities or conducts in public places that impede or obstruct the use and the safety thereof for the health, safety, and welfare of the town residents and visitors. Hopefully everybody read this, but before we get into discussion, we have some public comment on that. I'm going to set it for 2 minutes. Gabriel Sanez. Hi.
My name is Gabriela Sainz, and I'm here on behalf of Lotus House Women's Shelter to speak on agenda item 2B. So the proposed ordinances to regulate or prohibit. I thought it was kind of low. All right, is that better? All right, so the proposed ordinances to regulate or prohibit certain conduct on public property unfairly penalizes our community's most vulnerable residents and places individuals experiencing homelessness at a greater risk by restricting life-sustaining activities. Currently, in Florida, there are over 25,000 people experiencing homelessness on any given day, with Miami-Dade County consistently ranking #1 for the highest homeless population in the state. By placing additional barriers in the way of escape, punitive measures like banning and criminalizing life-sustaining activities are not a solution to ending homelessness, but rather exacerbate the problem. For instance, the added burden of a criminal record and outstanding fees and fines will not only make it more difficult for those experiencing homelessness to find employment and secure housing, but to ultimately transition out of homelessness. We often fail to realize that people experiencing homelessness are not there by choice, but rather from a lack of choices, and these regulations neglect the larger issue. The universal cause of homelessness is the lack of truly affordable housing. So when left with their most basic needs unmet, people experiencing homelessness are simply trying to survive. With a shortage of beds within our community-wide system, there's not enough capacity to shelter everyone. Lotus House currently shelters over 500 women, youth, and children nightly, and yet we are forced to turn away women and children every night due to a lack of capacity. Greater investment in the shelter system, affordable housing, and supportive services can help bridge the gap and allow people to successfully exit out of homelessness. We are simply asking for a shift in the conversation. People experiencing homelessness are residents of our community too and deserve to be given choices and the opportunities to live a better life. We propose to work together towards a multifaceted, evidence-based solutions that will create new pathways to ending and preventing homelessness. Thank you.
Thank you. As the clerk pointed out, we haven't had a motion to get this item started for discussion. So I'm gonna.
I'd like to make a motion to have the discussion for regulations, prohibitions on public property.
Second.
Second.
Thank you. We'll continue with public comment at this time.
All those in favor?
Well, it's fine.
Aye.
All right. Stephen Schnably. Sorry if I mispronounced it.
Very close. Thank you. My name is Stephen Snabely. I'm a professor of law at the University of Miami School of Law, and I'm here on behalf of the Greater Miami chapter of the ACLU and the Miami Coalition to Advance Racial Equity, MCARE. And I want to just make a few basic points. The proposed ordinances would clearly impose the threat of arrest on people who have no choice but to live on the streets simply for engaging in life-sustaining conduct, like sitting or sleeping in public spaces. And it's both wrong and counterproductive. As the previous speaker said, homelessness is not a choice. There's the severe shortage of affordable housing in Miami-Dade County, as well as no shelter available. The number of people who experience homelessness is far greater than the number of shelter beds in Miami-Dade County. So people who are forced to live on the street have no choice but to eat, sleep, bathe, and so on in public spaces. And you know, these punishment measures, which is what it amounts to in practice, will fall on a population that is also disproportionately black. Now, ordinances 1 and 2 would make it illegal to sleep, eat, rest, sit in public spaces, things you have to do to live. Ordinances 3 and 5 would punish people for basic activities like bathing or answering the call of nature without any regard to whether there are public facilities available for doing so. And Ordinance 4 would punish people who are in dire straits for asking for charity. 3 points. Criminalization is unconstitutional, as federal courts have repeatedly ruled. And I would add that municipalities that violate constitutional rights make themselves subjected not only to liability to plaintiffs, but to attorney's fees. And in the case of Pottinger v. City of Miami, that cost the City of Miami $1.5 million. Second, criminalization makes the problem worse. As Ms. Saines was pointing out, it's harder to find a job. And third, the Surfside should join in with the trust on the 1-cent meals and beverage tax and on implementing Housing First. And I do hope the Commission will take these more constructive approaches than what is proposed here. Thank you.
Thank you, Stephen. Gerardo Valdostegui.
I'm Gerardo Valdostegui, 9148 Froud Avenue. Like Professor Schneebly, I want to speak a little bit about the constitutional law here, but before I get to that, I think my moral education preceded my legal education, and what strikes me about these measures, first and foremost, is just the sheer cruelty of them. As the two speakers before me have said, there are people who shower in a public shower because they have nowhere else to go. There are people, here in Surfside, we enjoy a lot of benefits. We live in a very wealthy town. People who are lucky enough to own property here have made a lot of money recently. That same housing market that's leading so many of us to live large is driving people to live on the streets because the rents in even affordable neighborhoods like North Beach and North Miami have skyrocketed in recent years. And if you're temporarily homeless because you couldn't pay the rent suddenly and you find yourself on the street, this means that the Surfside police can arrest you for using soap at the beach, okay? That is just ridiculous. And there is no public health threat, there is no safety threat from the use of soap or shampoo. That is merely put in there so that the police have an excuse to harass people and get them in trouble with the criminal law. And once you're in trouble with the criminal law, you have court dates, you have other problems, it makes it more likely that you're gonna stay on the streets, okay? Now, as a constitutional lawyer, I want to say one other thing. This measure was written in a sort of some slightly clever way by some attorney because it doesn't include the word homelessness. It's just a measure to ban certain conduct, right? But that's a euphemism. The clear unifying principle behind all of these proposals is to target a particular class of people. If you're watching this video at home and you're worried that you like to bring Johnson's baby shampoo to the beach for your kid and you won't be able to do it anymore, you don't have to worry because the police aren't really going to enforce it against you. This law was written to target a specific class of people. The selection is going to be selective. The enforcement is going to be selective. And we need to be alert to that possibility. As Professor Schneebly said, the town could very well get sued if we try to enforce these provisions. And if we do, we're on the hook for plaintiff's fees. Please don't pass this cruel, unconstitutional proposal.
Thank you, Gerardo. Ms. Salzauer?
Eliana Salzauer, 9317 Bay Drive. I want to start off by saying that the difference between any one of us and a homeless family is just a series of bad luck. A layoff, a firing, a forced resignation, a dissolution of a family marriage, any of those things can land a family on the streets. The Lotus House is full of wonderful families that are not there by choice or because they did something wrong. They're there because life handed them some very, very short straws. We should not be penalizing them further by giving them a criminal record for doing life-sustaining activities like sleeping, peeing, showering. You want to complain that people smell bad and they have an opportunity to shower and rinse off in our showers and use some baby shampoo, then that's not a problem. This town does not contribute. It is one of 2 towns, so you know. It used to be Miami Beach, Surfside, and Bal Harbour that do not contribute the 1% tax for to homeless shelters and to domestic violence. Miami Beach voted a few years ago to contribute. So now it's just us and Bal Harbour. Okay, some of the richest towns around, and we're sitting here saying, you know what, we're not going to provide any services, we're not going to give you your 1%, and now we're going to arrest anyone. And the way that this law is written, and it is a law, and it criminalizes things, is that any one of us could be arrested for this, homeless or not. I know a lot of families that like to shower at the beach when they get stung by jellyfish or such, and they'll bring some shampoo and they'll shower off there. What, they don't get arrested because they're white? They don't get arrested because we know them? That's not okay. We don't want the town to go down this road. For a commission that took office and said, we are going to never put this town in a position where we have to rack up legal bills, right? You criticized the beach share ordinance because, oh my gosh, the Grand Beach Hotel sued us. What do you think is going to happen tonight when you decide to pass this or you move forward with this? Prepare yourself for a lawsuit, and not from the Grand Beach, but from the ACLU, from every other organization in the country, because this is proven case law. The Grand Beach never had a chance. They were going to lose that lawsuit, and they knew it. All right, that was just you guys bending over. But here, this is proven case law, and we're going to lose. So don't be on the wrong side of this. Thanks.
Thank you, Mrs. Salzauer. Mr. Platt.
I waive.
Joanna Katz.
Joanna Cates, 9141 Froud. I chose this town because it's a compassionate place. I chose to raise my kids here. My son called me today so excited about a college class he's taking called Urban Planning and Race. We raised our kids to think these things through. It'll be embarrassing for me to tell my kids that we are doing something that's immoral. I really think you guys need to think about this. Thank you.
Thank you. Amanda Davenport.
Hi, Amanda Davenport, 694th Street. A topic I feel very strongly about. Many of you in the commission have gotten, including Chief of Police, many pictures recently in the past few months of the craziness that's been going on in this town. I feel like I live on the Upper West Side of California. After living on the Upper West Side for 10 years, attacked by one, chased by one, had my ankle pulled by one, my children harassed by one, and within the past few months, it's happening again. 8 o'clock in the morning, the kids are being picked up at the bus at Publix. 2 weeks ago, a man was there staring at all of them, scaring them, homeless, loitering, a blanket, scaring the children. Number 2, sleeping on the street, many of them sleeping on the street. Some of them are not doing this, some of them are, some of them will, some of them will not. I've seen them relieve themselves in many ways. I have seen, and I'm on the beach all the time. I've seen them in Publix, upstairs, doing things that are inappropriate. I cannot go for ice cream with my children without being scared of any one of them. Now, another question. Anybody that spoke before, 2 out of the 4, don't even have children that live in this town. How dare they get up here and speak about any equality when they don't have children that need to go to the supermarket?
Excuse me, I'm going to...
If you do that,
Mrs.
you're gonna have to
Davenport,
leave.
Mrs. Davenport, please
I
direct
let
your
you all
comments.
speak.
Mrs.
My turn.
Davenport.
I'm a mother in this town, let me speak.
Mrs. Davenport, please direct your comments. I'm going to remind the public, if you're going to scream and shout and disrupt the meeting, I'm going to have you removed. Thank you.
It's funny, what's funny, that my safety and my children's safety and people that I know safety is jeopardized, and by the way, I am not the only one. There are many other people that cannot be here at 5:30. They have small children. I don't know, the last time I looked at demographics in this town, the children are 10 and under. And a lot of them right now are putting their kids to bed and doing homework and want to be here. And they will send emails or have sent emails. So you all know up there what is going on in this town when it comes to loitering, being homeless, sleeping on the street, having to walk over them, having them stare you down, having them look demeaning at you. They haven't done anything to me personally here. But it is a matter of time when they will, where they might be able to take a child, punch them, pull them into the bushes. They are mentally ill. We need to get stuff for them to take care of them, not have them shower with Dove soap at the 94th Street shower. Oh, why don't we just get a pillow for them and a sleeping bag and some food for them? No, this is enough is enough. This is not the Upper West Side of California. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Davenport.
Mayor, if I
Yes.
may, can you, and if anyone has the mic up, can you please, or on, can you make sure they're off so we don't get the feedback? Thank you.
You're welcome. Mr. Jacobson? No?
Ben Jacobson, 9455 Collins Avenue. A lot of us have moved here from places like New York and California, And what's going on in those states are absurd. You can't walk down the street. You've lost the right to the public streets. I'm sorry, no matter how many times you want to say it, the street is not a toilet. It's not where you go to the bathroom. It's not where you sleep. It is a place for you to transfer, to go from the street to the next street, or to a shop, or to a store. These are very normal things. Obstruction of a sidewalk. If I decide to lie down in the middle of a sidewalk, somebody should make me move. It makes very normal sense. Sleeping on the beach. I mean, you can't make it your home. There are shelters out there. There are places to go, but the public areas are not one of those. Showering on the beach with chemical substance. All right, so if someone brings some shampoo, here and there, that's probably the only point they may have on this. But all these other items here are here to have a purpose, and that is to keep people safe. These streets are not designed for this. They're not meant for it. Look at New York. Look at California. You see all you need to see. People, there's areas now. People can't go to parks. Police officers can't enter certain areas. Washington is out of control. And we all moved to Florida for these protections, to be able to go and live about your lives and take care of yourself and your families. And right now, we're going the wrong way. So please pass this ordinance and keep our residents safe. Thank you.
This is why I have it on all the time. Thank you, Mr. Jacobson. At this time, there is no more public comment, no more cards, speaker cards. I'm closing public comment and opening it up for discussion to the commission. Anybody want to say anything? No?
This topic, calling it what you will, is obviously very emotional, challenging, has been debated and discussed by authorities and municipalities much larger than our 7,000 plus. And yes, there are issues with populations of folks that live on the street, whether it be Portland, Oregon, San Francisco, LA, other places. It's an issue, and it's tough. And I will try to keep this to a minimum. I apologize, but it's tough to balance public safety with the rights of people that happen to be walking through our town that don't necessarily have a residence here. And yes, the ACLU is a very strong organization, which I'm sure has many, many attorneys, and the threat of lawsuit is nothing for them or any other organization. So appreciate that threat from the public here. I would like, and I also do know, in talking to our former chief, our acting chief of police, about this issue, that they have limited tools and resources to help in this area because of lack of legislation. Other cities do. New York, for example, has a significant number of actions they can take with their public safety officers that we don't utilize or can't utilize. So my thoughts here to share is I'd like to see more discussion, other options. There's got to be a way, there's got to be ways to help keep our residents safe, to keep our children safe, and not have to be there to watch things happen that isn't appropriate. I'm not sure this legislation may go too far. So I'm open to having further discussions, maybe a workshop. There needs to be a happy medium here, in my opinion, to help keep the residents of Surfside safe and secure.
I think that these are reasonable additions to protect the public without infringing on the rights of all. But I would like to also check with the attorneys to find out if these prohibition on public properties are legal. Have we made sure that these additions
So there's no
are legal?
ordinances forward. These are things that we would like to work on based
Okay.
on what exists in other municipalities.
So,
We have found ordinances in other municipalities down here in South Florida that have these, and we want to take and mix and match and see what we can do.
So I do think, to me, they sound reasonable without infringing on the rights of others. And perhaps we could look into the homeless, the 1% again, or doing something more on our part to help the homeless. I don't know what that is again, so maybe we can
Again,
look
it
into.
doesn't say the word homeless here, and I'm gonna keep us on track. Today's about regulations and prohibitions on public property.
Okay, so,
Who's breaking those regulations and who's gonna be showering and who's gonna be running around urinating on the street is not tied to a specific demographic. I'm gonna ask the public, again, if you're going to disrupt, I'm gonna have to ask you to leave. It's hard to run a meeting with the public input.
so again, I think it's reasonable to look into further discussion on this.
Thank you, Commissioner. Commissioner?
I do agree that there needs to be regulations. I don't look at this as it's targeted only towards a certain demographic. I think this is a problem that can happen anywhere. I mean, it could be a drunk person that just got drunk at the not public, Flanagan's, thank you, and just came out and threw himself on the floor, vomited all over the place. I mean, this is not the right setting that I want to see to have my children see. And I think I don't agree with everything here. For example, the bathing in the street ends, I think that, maybe that can be tweaked. However, the other parts, I mean, somebody shouldn't be urinating in public places. There's children in this town. There's many children in this town, and
Mr. Platt,
and
this is your
families.
second warning. I'm
And that's
sorry,
something
Commissioner.
that should, I'm sorry.
Sorry, 1 second. Mr. Platt, this is now your second warning. I'm gonna ask you to stop calling out from the crowd. Thank you.
I haven't said anything verbally.
This is now gonna be your third warning, so please remain quiet. Please remain quiet. Stop speaking out towards the commission. You're here to participate by listening and during public comment. That's it.
We don't know who the person is that's doing these things. I honestly don't feel this being targeted towards just one group in particular. I think this is something that's in general to protect the good and welfare of our residents. There should be no one urinating in anywhere or whatever in public places. There should be nobody sleeping on the beach. I mean, accidents can happen, like it mentions here, in case of a child or even an adult can, have a situation. But I mean, to do it deliberately, knowingly, and going out there and doing this type of action is not right. Like I said, the only thing I probably would have some kind of tweaking on this would be probably the showering. And because you go to the beach, you probably have a piece of clothing or something that got full of sand, and it gets dirty, and you want to rinse it off before you carry all that sand to your home. That then it takes forever to get out of your floors, and if you have carpets, forget about that. But that's honestly the only thing that I would probably maybe tweak a little bit or maybe not include. Other than that, I think that this is to protect our residents and our vulnerable residents, which are our children and our seniors. So that's what I have to say on that.
Thank you. I'm personally felt that this was one of the few times I've actually seen somebody write health, safety, and welfare, and it actually meant it on a topic. So thank you, because it usually gets just thrown around for any topic that someone doesn't like. So I think this is actually a direct health, safety, and welfare of the town of residents and its visitors. This does address that. I am comfortable with having our attorneys look more into this and then see if this will have any legal problems, and if there's no challenges or problems that they see on their end, I'm comfortable moving this legislation forward.
Thank you. Just some final comments. Again, you'll all notice that the word homeless is not being used in this, transient, and there's a reason for that, and that is because, like we mentioned, this is not targeting a specific demographic or the homeless at all. We are looking to target people that don't follow our laws and don't have any regards for our quality of life in town here. Just to address one of the speakers, Pottinger versus Miami, that's big talk, but that actually got overturned in 2019. The idea here, and all these ordinances, although there are no ordinances here, the idea is to draft ordinances. We have been working with other municipalities that have them existing. We're not going to be creating these things from scratch. They exist currently in other municipalities. Nobody's getting sued, but we have the right to protect our residents. We have reports of people urinating, defecating, masturbating in public places. We don't have any laws to stop that. We don't have any laws to get the police to be able to address that, all right? We get our police reports weekly, and there are so many people that are Baker acted for many actions which should not be legal, but again, we don't have any regulations to stop that. About a month or so ago, there was a woman who was severely beaten in Hallover, only a few blocks from here. She was about to be raped until somebody stopped that. We don't need to see those things happening here. We need to make sure that people that live here, that walk through here, respect our laws. We had over the holiday, a child was picked up by somebody and started walking off with the child. He ended up being arrested. Again, this is about pedestrian safety, and I'm sorry I don't agree, but there is no middle ground when it comes to this. There is no reason for our voters, for our residents, for the people that pay to be here. We are a municipality. We don't exist by the grace of God. We exist because of the tax revenue that comes in, and that's how and we need to protect those residents. Residents have the right to safe and quality of life, and that's why I feel that these things need to be enacted and addressed. So if I can get a motion to direct the town attorney to come back with a first draft of ordinances based on these items.
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Madam Clerk, you want to call the roll, please?
Just interject one piece before we vote. Mr. Mayor, through the chair.
I feel like I regret it every time, but sure.
Thank you. I would like to encourage our council to go above and beyond in this case, to perhaps include attorneys from other organizations that can help perhaps minimize the effects that the folks that have spoken today might materialize. So if we can again ask the attorney to have conversations, understand the scope of what's being asked here, to find, if possible, a middle ground somewhere where it works and it's not perhaps perceived as harsh by some people, and that we do provide the protection and the tools for our public safety officers to do their job and do it effectively. That's just what I'd like to add to that.
My compromise would be there's a double lot down by Bay Drive that we can allow people to, break some of these decency laws if they so move.
I just wanted to, if we could incorporate in this that, for example, the part where washing your clothes or bathing should be at the discretion of the police officer that comes to the spot. Because, if the person is just rinsing off the sand off their clothes, I don't want one of our residents to get arrested because they're trying to not bring all the sand to their home. That's something that I think it should be at the discretion of the police officer that responds to that particular incident.
What I would say, Commissioner, is let's see what happens when we get our first draft. Right now, the idea is just to kind of push them to come up with the ordinance draft.
I understand, but just to give direction to our town attorney to include something like
Commissioner speaking to the mic.
Sorry. I just want to give direction to our town attorney to include something like that, or to think about solutions on a situation in a case like that. That's all I want.
Sounds good, Madam Clerk.
Commissioner Lansman?
Yes.
Commissioner Velasquez?
Yes.
Commissioner Mashai?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Danziger?
Yes.
Mayor, the motion carries.
Thank you. Moving on to item 2C. Mr. Vice Mayor, this is your item. If you'll introduce it and then make a motion, please.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So this commission discussed one of the first things we did when we got elected, we decided we were not going to try and rewrite a whole zoning code. We're not going to spend over $270,000 and just toss it away. We're going to work with what we got and fix the zoning code ambiguity. So I believe that the town attorney, the town planner have started compiling a list for us to discuss. So this would be items to start bringing forward to the commission, to the Planning and Zoning Board as well, to start doing first readings for zoning code ambiguities. I'm not saying rewrite a whole zoning code. This is what we talked about. There's inconsistencies in the code. A great example is the driveways. Does a driveway today with a curb cut of 18 or 2 of 12? Is 12 plus 12 the same 24 both ways? Is that a yes or a no? And that's an ambiguity. We're just going to start fixing ambiguities in the code so that our code doesn't create Ambiguities, it's as simple as that, and inconsistencies. It should be a pretty black and white thing. Try and take as much gray out of the code as possible. So this is a motion to start and move forward to fix some of those zoning inconsistencies and ambiguities.
If I may add, if I'm correct, we budgeted for this in the last budget cycle, correct?
That is correct.
All right. So the motion is to move forward with it?
Can I,
Vice Mayor just made a motion.
Yep, we need a second.
Second.
All right,
for discussion, as discussion, thank you, Mr. Chair. This is a lot. And each of these topics can probably take an hour to hours to discuss. Mr. Ressi, our land use attorney, can attest to the challenges that took place in the last commission when they did their ZIP, zoning in progress, that took untold hours, workshops, and basically went nowhere. I don't want to go nowhere. So can I recommend as an alternative for this motion is we schedule a joint session between the P&Z board and the commission and have it open to the public, of course, noticed, and have a chance to discuss these to be able to then better give direction to the attorneys about what to change as far as muni code. So I don't want to leave it to Mr. Resio to simply come back with adjustments. I want to have a chance to discuss it, and I think our P&Z board should be included in that. So I think that would be the best next step.
again, I'm confused. We've discussed this before November and budgeted for it. So are we going back on the item that we were trying to get done?
Through the chair, I'd like to get it done effectively, professionally, and with input beyond just the attorney, who will do a great job for us. But I think that we should allow for, again, discussion, public input where it might be appropriate. The public may not show up for this. The public may have no interest whatsoever in our code, as perhaps they have other priorities. But I do think this is part of the steps where we get input and don't do it in the silo. I remember the last commission never asked for the P&Z board's input until the 11th hour, 11:30, and we had a joint meeting, and all of a sudden the commissioners were like, wow, you guys on P&Z know some stuff. We should have talked to you months or years ago. Commissioner Velasquez can agree, because she was one of those people saying, oh my God, the light bulb just turned on. And so I'd like to avoid that scenario where the five of us perhaps think we know enough. I'd like input from others, and it's simply, again, let's make these adjustments. We've already done a number of these things. Air conditioning on the rooftop, curb cuts, marine structures. We've done a lot of these things individually, and they took hours to get done. I'd like to get this done appropriately with input from the public and input from P&Z.
I feel like there's a conflict of interest because you were on P&Z last year. But, yes, Commissioner.
Thank you, Commissioner Landsman, for bringing that up. I was going to suggest exactly the same thing. Planning and zoning is a very important part of our daily life here in town, and especially now that there's so much construction going on here. I definitely do think that a joint P&Z and town commission meeting is important with the subject like this, especially that you have so many items here. I think that discussing each one individually and agreeing on these things and understanding exactly where the ambiguity is and how we can resolve this situation. I think it's part of being transparent and offering our residents all the tools necessary for them to understand exactly what this commission is doing and how we're getting this done. And I think that it's very important, this meeting. And yes, I wanted to have several P&Z joint meetings, and unfortunately we never got to that until the very end. And yes, it was an eye-opener. There was a lot of things that we learned that night, things that could have been resolved many months earlier, maybe even a year or two earlier. So I definitely agree with a joint P&Z meeting. I think it's important to have everybody come together and with our town planner, discuss these items so we can properly change things where the problems are. And if there's nothing that we're hiding here, then I don't see a problem with doing this in the public eye.
All right, thank you, Commissioner. You understand that means more meetings for us, right? I just want to make sure you know. Can we just do public comment, and then we'll just finish up the discussion and make a motion. Mr. Kouslis?
George Kouslis, 9225 Collins Avenue. I agree with the initiative as put forth by the Vice Mayor. The ambiguities and inconsistencies that are on this memo These are things that were uncovered actually by the $220,000 effort of the previous commission. So that wasn't all for naught. The clock ran out on that effort. But what it did do was it opened up a creaking zoning code. And what you're talking about here are not policy changes. So the driveway thing you mentioned, that's a policy change. The dock thing that was mentioned is a policy change. These are much more minor. These are inconsistencies and ambiguities where the code seems to be saying one thing when you read it one way and you wake up the next morning and it says something else. And there are a handful of those in the code. And I think that's what this was intended to do. It was meant to be a very short, tight exercise. And I think if you open it up to the broader discussion again, this will just go through so many different cycles that it will never come to an end. And people will continue to find something over and over again. I'll give you an analogy. I used to do a lot of black and white photography. And when you do real photography with negatives, you get little dust on the negative, and it shows up as a white dot on the print. And so your next exercise is to actually take a very fine brush and put a dot of dye in the middle of that white speck. You don't paint over it because you'll get a donut. You put a little dot that kind of obscures the fact that there's a dot there. So you do that, boop, 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 boop. And then you look at your print and you go, what the hell did I do? I didn't do anything. There are more dots. It's like a whole nother magnitude down in terms of apparent dots. And you keep on going and you drive yourself insane trying to get rid of every dot. And that's what you'll do if you do the zoning code the way of going through it again. I think you have a good memo in front of you, and I would deal with it. And there's always another opportunity. Thank you.
I hate turning this off. Mrs. Salzauer?
Eliana Salzauer, 9317 Bay Drive. I agree with Commissioner Landsman. Every one of these zoning changes, it's not, using the term ambiguity is like if you ask your kid and you ask your dad for something and he says no, and you ask your mom and she says yes. That's not an ambiguity. Yeah, I'm clarifying the ambiguity. We're going to go with mom. That's not how it works. When there's a difference of opinion within the code, there's a reason why there's a difference of opinion. And that requires, as Mr. Landsman said, some serious thought. This is not about just getting stuff done. That is, that's the excuse that's being used here to cut corners, to not do, to not actually have professional guidance on these things. That's a reason why we're waiving competitive bidding on everything. That's why you're making rash decisions on everything. We're not just trying to throw a whole bunch of things out there so we can point to something and said, look, Mom, what I did. Every one of these things is going to have a cumulative impact. Every time you approve another foot of concrete in town on every single house, the aggregate amount means more concrete, less permeable space, and whether that's on the public right-of-way or on private property, it's more concrete, and that leads to more flooding. And then we sit here and go, my gosh, what do we do about the flooding? How did we get in this situation? All of these things have a domino effect, and you can't sit up there. And by the way, I also think that we should, when you get a chance, if there's ever a sane commission in office again, should make a rule that someone who's a lobbyist, someone who's a developer should have to stand up here like an alcoholic and say, hi, my name is so-and-so, and I'm a developer. And then they can put their opinion in here. Because what's happening is people are giving their opinion.
Please stick to the item on the agenda.
I am. People are giving their opinion on things when they have a vested interest. And if anyone has a conflict of interest up here, it's not Fred who sat on the P&Z board. It's other people on the commission who make their living and their dollars every day building and expanding the zoning code to make construction easier, to make the permitting process easier.
Mrs. Salzauer, please stick to the item on the
That
agenda,
is the
which
item.
is the zoning ambiguities
The person
and our attorney.
proposing the zoning ambiguity changes should be recusing themselves from introducing or voting on this topic. Thank you.
Thank you. Allison Fleck.
Good evening. My name's Allison Fleck. I live at 9317 Dickens Avenue. I've been here since 2009, and I was a zoning board chairman for 10 and a half years in Holmdel, New Jersey, an equally white-collar, wealthy town that was in disarray when I was appointed to the board. I originally came on as the recording secretary. My voice was on every recording for 10 and a half years, and ultimately I became the chairman of the board, mostly because I didn't know anybody and I had no vested interest in anything that happened in the town. So I'm listening to all of you for the first time because I had not come to a meeting prior. And one of the things that I've noticed is there's a lot of infighting, and there really doesn't need to be because we are a fabulous town and you all really are seeming to want to do a good job. One of the things I want to tell you about zoning codes is they're really confusing. It's like reading the Bible in these, thous, and those. Nobody understands it. Even the engineers, I'm chairman, did not understand it. I think if you make it as simple as you can be, you can do this, the sign can be like this, the driveway can be like that, residents will accommodate that. Residents just want to know what the rules are because nobody's looking for trouble. I wish you all the very best in resolving this issue because your residents want to be here, and I'm really happy to be here. And I'm very, very grateful for the opportunity to attend your meeting and hear how you run it, because I've been hearing good, bad, and indifferent. You're right, people have to stick to the topic. People, it's not personal, this is business, this is the town. The one thing people forget when they talk about zoning is it runs with the land. If we have a gal that has 7 children and therefore she needs a variance to do more on her property than the person that has none, it's really irrelevant because it runs with the land. When she sells her house and moves on, whatever the zoning and planning board approved stays with that house, stays with that town. If it's good for you, it's good for everybody. But at the end of the day, don't give up because your residents show up because they care, and I'm really happy that all of you want to resolve these issues. I'm very proud of you. God bless.
Thank you, Allison. Thank you for the positive feedback. It's refreshing. If I may, I just want to, that's all we have for item 2B. 2C. Yes, thank you. A few hours of sleep last night. If I can ask the attorney just to clarify the difference between zoning changes and zoning ambiguity. Why am I trying to try this word right now? Ambiguity is, I should have broken it down.
Sure. So this list has a few different elements to it. And this was all compiled based on everything that went on with the last commission. Should be. Sorry, Madam Clerk. This list was compiled based on everything that went on with the last commission and the zoning code rewrite. The input of the previous planning and zoning board, the input of this planning and zoning board, just input as things arose, inconsistencies that we found, changes that were made over the last in the last year that have certain elements that are kind of like left in the code that didn't make it into those changes that probably should have. I'll give you an example. Number 1, in our list, section 90-2, update definition of density for consistency with the lot area definition. The lot area definition was modified last year, and then it was put in the charter on top of that. That passed. That got rid of any concept of gross density. And yet our definition of density still says gross acre. So that would be to delete gross from that definition. That's a really simple one. Some of these are like that. There are others that have a little bit more policy angle to them, certainly, because there are issues that keep coming up. So perhaps, if yes? No. So that's what this list is about. I'm happy to address it however you guys like, with whatever direction you want. If you want to select some, the easier ones to deal with, I'm happy to do that, or it's whatever the will of the commission is.
I mean, if you guys want to do this tonight, then I guess maybe Tony can explain to us every single one of these and
Commissioner.
explain exactly what the ambiguity
Commissioner.
is. Well, you
A
did give
point-
me the floor.
Point of inquiry is if you had a question on what Tony
Okay,
had
so
just said
then point of
specifically.
information, whatever.
That's if you're going to add information to what he just said.
Okay,
It
so then
doesn't mean that
when
you
do I
get to
ask my
obtain the floor.
question?
You get the floor.
Okay,
When you
so
obtain the floor,
Did you give me the floor or not?
No, you had a point of
Yes.
inquiry. You had a point of inquiry. I will have to
Well,
rule that out
that's
of
why I'm
order and then
saying-
continue with the meeting.
Okay, so then can I
Let me
ask a
just come to the
question?
vice mayor because he
Okay.
was waiting, and I'll come right back to you, all right? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So, just want to let everyone know, I find it rude and offensive that a former elected official would say our town attorney and our town planner who compiled this list wasn't done under professional guidance, because this list did not come from anybody up here, but came from our town attorney and our town planner. So please, with the name calling, the attacks of our employees, it's enough. You want to attack us personally, all day. What? Was never said.
Mrs.
yet.
Salzauer, you please
Didn't
don't
address you.
speak.
So, You want to attack me? You guys do it all the time. I got no issue. Do not attack our employees. Our employees are professionals. They're the ones that compiled this list. This was not done by here. This is done by the town attorney and the town planner, who have been sitting up here and was part of our previous P&Z board, and our town attorney, who is the town attorney for the P&Z board. That is where this list came from previous commissions, from ours, everything that's been uncovered. This is not really policy stuff. What one of the previous speakers says, this is the ambiguities and the inconsistencies. That is what we're looking to address. I would love to have a joint session with our P&Z board to discuss some of the policy stuff, which is some in here. But the ambiguities and inconsistencies are pop up all the time. And that is what I would like the town attorney to address some of those. This is just a starting point. I think we're gonna have probably 2-3 more pages that we're gonna uncover, that residents say, hey, I applied for a permit and this came out when I was applying. This doesn't read right in the code. This is just a working list that we're gonna start knocking off, adding on, knocking off, adding on, because we're trying to take out the gray in the code, the ambiguities and the consistencies. We want it to be as black and white as possible so that it's not open to interpretation. If people wanna create lawsuits, of course they wanna leave things up to interpretation. We are trying to eliminate that. We are trying to make it as simple for any applicant that is applying for a permit, our town attorney, our town planner, to be able to interpret the code and say, yep, you can do it this way, not say, oh, sorry, you wanted to put your driveway or your pool in? I'm not really sure. We're gonna have to wait 6 months or a year to get that figured out, because that's unfair to our residents. So that's where this came from.
All right, thank you, Mr. Vice Mayor. Yes, Commissioner Velasquez.
Okay, I just, if you want to discuss these items today, I would like our town attorney to kindly explain every single one of these so we can make a clear decision on this right now. Because if you don't want to do the joint PNC meeting, but yet you want to pass these ambiguities, which could be considered like the same thing when people didn't understand that 10% cap is a 10% cap, or an understory is a third floor. So, I mean, these are things that could be considered ambiguities as well, because you may interpret it English one way and I interpret it in a different way, and therefore for you it's an ambiguity. For me, it's trying to change what's here to try to do things without going to the voters or without doing the right process. So I would like our town attorney to kindly explain, and if they're so simple, I guess there are only 15 here, so we can sit here and he can explain to us exactly what each one of these is.
Point of information, Mr. Mayor, we're not voting on anything tonight there's no zoning code rewriting here. This was just discussion on some of the things that were uncovered to start the conversation.
All right, Commissioner Manchet.
I just wanted to say that after attending P&Z meetings for the last 2 years during the last commission, there were several ambiguities that appeared. And I think this is a good thing. I think we need to deal with this, and we need to continue to evaluate these ambiguities and on an ongoing basis. So I think it's a good thing.
All right, thank you. If you don't mind, I haven't said it, got my input yet. What? All right. Again, I had written a note prior to the meeting that I would also have liked some sort of special meeting. We have a lot of stuff to go through. Obviously, I don't want to start addressing that at a regular commission meeting, as this is going to be a long evening. I would like to say that our land use attorney, Tony, is probably one of the best land use attorneys in the United States, like all the way there. So when he suggests something, we should be listening. But I would like to do, as the Vice Mayor said, a joint meeting, at least for our first run, most definitely before this comes back as ordinance changes and combine that meeting with P&Z. Mr. Forbes and Mr. Bravo are here. You're shaking your heads, yes or no? You want more work? All right. So if the motion is to move forward and kind of set up a joint meeting with P&Z to start reviewing these items and coming forth with, I guess, ordinance changes to the code.
Would that be an acceptable amendment for Vice Mayor Rose and Commissioner Mascheid's motion?
Their motion was just to discuss this.
No, the motion that Vice Mayor made was to start moving forward to fix the zoning ambiguities.
I'm comfortable doing a joint workshop, and I have one comment after. Yep.
Is that okay also with the second?
Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Just one more comment, and to Commissioner Velasquez, it would take hours to get through this. It's impossible and practical. So the other piece is there are pieces here that are absolutely policy related. Just two at the end, fences, walls, and gates. That is policy, big policy, and can't be just a simple ambiguity. Again, on P&Z, and Mr. Bravo will remember this, we talked about the uncertainty about how to approve or not approve any kind of gates and fences and walls. We need to have a discussion. I think that joint meeting can address and bring that to the table so we can have some policy decision about that. The other piece, this last one, synthetic turf. I call it fake grass, whatever you want to call it. That is a policy decision. That's much bigger than simply an ambiguity. So I think we could take all 15, have, again, a workshop, 2-3 hours, invite the public, and try to tackle a few of these. There may be a few that are simple discussions and one word here, one word there. That I won't disagree with, and Mr. Resio can help us identify those as quick and easy fixes to reduce the ambiguities. But I think some of these are big policy decisions that we need to discuss. I absolutely need the input of the P&Z board, our town planner, and anyone else from the public that wants to be included.
All right, let's not start inviting everybody to
Mayor, if
that
I
table.
may, just for
Yes.
clarification purpose, are we talking about a joint special meeting between both boards, or just a workshop where there's no motion?
That was my idea, and I think the vice mayor had that in mind also. To start with at least a special meeting of a joint special meeting with the commission and the tourist board, not tourist board. I guess they can come too. 'Cause
Yes.
commission, right?
Yes, but the other item,
Everybody,
yes.
all the boards can
So the
come
other
and be
item I
part
wanted
of
to add
this.
was, we have our liaison 2 members here. If there's any other items to add on to this list for our joint meeting, please at the end of the month, relay that message that you have your meeting. We want to add to this list. We want to tackle and start knocking out 1 through 7. Oh, we got more, but more weren't covered. So we just want to keep bringing those forward. If any residents have applied for permits and they're not sure there's an inconsistency, we want to hear about those. We want to add to this list and clean up the code. That's what we talked about doing. Cleaning up the current zoning code, not doing a rewrite. And that's what this is. Absolutely. There may be some that are inconsistency and some that are policies, and we can talk about those.
I mean, in regards to the synthetic turf, I'm reading here, it's not about legalizing the turf or not. It's about the homeowners that have it existing that now don't meet the pervious areas, and then the pending code enforcement. So what we want to do with that, it's not about addressing, do we want to start making it legal in town?
It's been chatted about for a while. I think it should be a policy decision that we bring it to the table, yay or nay, how do we do this? Because I think there's inconsistencies, front yard, backyard, side yard, how much, how little. I think that's a great topic for that workshop to come up with a policy decision that gets us moving forward. That's one of the many here, but fences, gates, and walls, I think we absolutely need to talk about policy.
I think my wife just texted me to stop making new meetings, but, well, I think it's a good idea.
Mayor, can I call a roll?
Sure. Yeah.
Commissioner Velasquez?
Just to clarify, so this is for a,
Just to move forward with scheduling a special joint meeting between planning and zoning and commission.
okay, so this is not approving what's here. Okay, perfect. So my answer is yes.
Commissioner Mashai?
Yes.
Commissioner Lansman?
Yes.
Vice Mayor Rose?
Yes.
Mayor Danziger?
Do we have a date set up for this or in mind? Like how soon are we gonna
I can send a doodle out. I just asked the town attorneys to provide me with some available dates, so I could send a doodle for both boards.
If there's any way possible, sorry to interrupt before you vote, can we do it in February or sometime so the P&Z board has time to meet? Because they're meeting, I know, in 2 weeks, so I'd like them to have their.
For the next commission meeting or after the next?
That I'm okay with. I just want the P&Z, I want it to be after the next P&Z morning so they can actually add to this list and get something to us, and then we're not doing another one.
Okay.
Because we didn't get to the tentative.
So I'll send out dates after the planning and zoning meeting, which is the 26th.
Before commission, yes.
I'll try. Mayor, vote?
Oh, sorry, you're all waiting for me. Yes.
Mayor, the motion carries.
Maybe I should hear the motion again before. All right. What do we have? 6:45, what is it? Item 2D, do we want to move this over to the next meeting so we could eat something they need to set up for the next meeting? We get a motion to defer to
I'll make a
7
motion
o'clock?
to move this to the 7 o'clock, to our next meeting for commissioner remarks, so we have time to set up for the next meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Any
Is-
opposed?
Nay.
Just a thought for the next meeting, once we go in,
I think
maybe
we're-
some linkages possibly with the other topic that's
That will
similar
be
to
the
this one?
other, the next meeting.
Yes, the next
Figure
one.
that out.
Mayor, did you vote it against?
No way.
Oh, okay, just checking.
I don't know if it supports Nellie, I'll vote against.
Okay. I need a motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion to adjourn?
Second.
Second.
Thank you.